My name is Sheyla Martins. I'm 25 years old. And last month, my father looked at my 8-year-old son across the dinner table and said, like he was talking about a bag of laundry instead of a child, "He can sleep in the car." That was the moment everything in me went still. Not loud, not angry, still, because my son Noah heard him. He was sitting there with his fork in his hand, his shoulders pulled up close to his ears, trying to make himself smaller in a room full of adults who were already treating him like he took up too much space. After my divorce, Noah and I moved into my parents' house. I thought it would be temporary. I thought it would be safe. I thought family meant you could come home when the ground disappeared under you. My mother, Patricia, never let me forget that we were not home. She kept saying it in this soft voice. "You and Noah are temporary guests, Sheyla. Temporary guests. Not daughter, not grandson. Guests." And guests, apparently, could be moved around. Guests could be corrected. Guests could be reminded who owned the roof over their heads. Then my sister Marissa showed up with suitcases. 3 of them. A rolling pink one with a broken wheel, a black duffel bag stuffed so full. The zipper looked ready to split, and a laundry basket of clothes she didn't bother folding. She had broken up with another boyfriend, or he had kicked her out. The story changed depending on who was listening. But the second Marissa walked through that front door, crying into my mother's shoulder, the house suddenly became warm again. For her, my mother made tea, my father carried her bags, and the little guest room where Noah and I had been sleeping suddenly became something everyone thought we should be willing to give up. I tried to stay calm, I really did. I told them Noah needed stability. I said he had already lost enough that year. I said I could keep sleeping beside him for a little longer, but I wasn't going to move him onto the floor, just so Marissa could have privacy. That was when my father leaned back in his chair, looked straight at my son, and said, "He can sleep in the car." Noah looked at me first. Not at my father, at me, like he was asking if that was true. Like he was asking if he had done something wrong by needing a bed. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a plate. I didn't say any of the things that flashed through my mind so fast they scared me. I just told Noah to go brush his teeth. My voice sounded normal. That almost made it worse. Later that night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was dark except for the little light over the stove. My mother always left it on. Not because she was thoughtful, but because she hated walking into a dark kitchen in the morning. Noah was asleep in the guest room. At least I hoped he was. His backpack was beside the bed, half-packed with 2 shirts, his favorite book, his toothbrush, and the little blue dinosaur he pretended he was too old to sleep with. He had packed it himself. He thought we might have to leave. That was what broke me. Not loudly. Just enough. I went to the closet, pulled my old suitcase from behind a stack of Christmas bins, and unzipped the lining at the bottom. That was where I had kept the envelope for years. My grandmother Rose gave it to me before she died. She told me not to tell my parents about it. She told me to keep it hidden until I needed a place that did not ask me to apologize for existing. At 17, I thought that sounded dramatic. At 25, sitting in my parents' kitchen after my father suggested my child sleep in a car, I understood it differently. The envelope was yellowed at the corners. My name was written across the front in Grandma Rose's handwriting, Sheyla, not Shelley, like my mother called me when she wanted to make me feel small. Not young lady, like my father said when he was about to remind me I had disappointed him. Just Sheyla. I opened it with my thumb because I couldn't find scissors and because my hands were shaking more than I wanted to admit. Inside was a handwritten letter, a folded legal document, a copy of something with a seal on it, and a business card with a name printed in dark blue letters, Daniel Voss, attorney at law. Underneath that, written in my grandmother's handwriting, were 5 words. About the blue house. I stopped breathing for a second. Grandma Rose's blue house, the one near the magnolia tree. The one my father never liked to talk about. The one my mother was said had caused enough trouble in this family. I read only enough to understand that the envelope was not sentimental. It was not just a goodbye letter. It was not some old woman's memory folded into paper. It was protection, and it had been waiting for me. I made one phone call that night from the back porch, with my bare feet on the cold concrete, and my phone pressed so tightly to my ear that it hurt. When the man on the other end heard my name, he got quiet. Then he said, "Sheyla Martins." I said, "Yes." He took a breath and said, "I was told you might call one day." The next morning, my father stood in the living room, already dressed for work, holding his coffee like a judge, holding a sentence. My mother was near the window, arms crossed. Marissa sat on the couch with one knee tucked under her, watching like this was something happening for her benefit. Noah stood close to me. His backpack was on one shoulder. My father started again, about gratitude, about responsibility, about how this was his house, about how I had confused help with entitlement. He was halfway through saying, "You need to understand your place here," when the doorbell rang. It was such a normal sound. One soft chime through a house that had spent weeks making my son feel unwanted. My father frowned, annoyed at the interruption. He set his coffee down and walked to the door. I remember the sound of his shoes on the hallway floor. I remember Marissa sitting up a little straighter. I remember Noah's fingers closing around mine. My father opened the door and then he stopped talking. Not paused, stopped. His mouth was still slightly open, like the next word had gotten trapped behind his teeth. The color changed in his face. My mother stepped forward and said, "Richard? Who is it?" He didn't answer. Because standing on the front porch was someone my father clearly recognized. Someone he never expected to see at our door. Someone who had been waiting behind my grandmother's envelope for years. Before I tell you who was standing there, tell me honestly, if someone looked at your child and said they could sleep in a car, would you have stayed calm? Now let me take you back. Because this did not start with the car. It started 3 months earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon, with 2 trash bags of clothes in my trunk, a folder of divorce paperwork on my passenger seat, and Noah sitting in the back pretending not to cry. The sky was the color of dishwater that day, flat gray. No storm, no sun, just that dull kind of weather that makes every building look tired. I had signed the last set of papers that morning. My hand had cramped halfway through my married name, Sheyla Martins. I stared at it for a second after I wrote it, because it was still technically mine, but it didn't feel like a name anymore. It felt like a receipt, proof that something had ended and cost more than I knew how to pay. The courthouse smelled like wet coats and floor cleaner. People moved through the halls carrying folders, coffee cups, children, problems. Nobody looked at anybody for too long. That helped. I didn't want to be seen falling apart. Noah waited with my friend Carla in the lobby while I finished. When I came out, he stood up too quickly, like he had been holding himself still for a long time. "Are we done?" he asked. I nodded. "We're done." He looked relieved for maybe 1 second. Then he asked, "Where are we going now?" I had known he would ask. I still hated that I didn't have a better answer. I had called my mother the night before. I did it from the parking lot of the apartment complex, where we had lived with my ex-husband. Half our things were already packed. The rent was behind, my savings were almost gone. My paycheck from the front desk at a dental office covered groceries, gas, and Noah's school lunches if I stretched it carefully. It did not cover first month, last month, deposit, and the kind of emergency that makes you call your parents even when your stomach hurts before they answer. My mother picked up on the fourth ring. "Sheyla, just my name, careful, already tired." I told her I needed a little time, a few weeks, maybe a month. I said I was looking for a better paying position. I said Noah would be quiet. I said I would help with groceries. I said all of it too fast. There was a pause, then she sighed. Not a cruel sigh. That would have been easier. It was the kind of sigh that made you feel like you had set something heavy on someone else's clean table. "Well," she said, "you can come for a little while, for a little while." I held on to that because it was still yes. Then she added, "But Sheyla, you understand this can't become one of those situations." I didn't ask what kind of situation. I already knew, the kind people whisper about. The kind where an adult daughter comes back home with a child and everyone starts measuring how much space she takes up. "I understand," I said. "You'll need to be considerate," she continued. "Your father likes things a certain way. And Noah is a sweet boy, but children can take over a house without meaning to." "He won't," I said. I hated how quickly I promised that, as if my son's existence was a mess I could manage. My father didn't get on the phone. I could hear him in the background asking what I wanted. My mother lowered her voice and said, "She just needs a little time." Then quieter after a pause, "I know." I sat in my car and looked at the apartment windows. Most of the blinds were crooked, Hours were too. I told myself it was only temporary. I told myself my pride mattered less than Noah having somewhere to sleep. I told myself lots of things that sounded practical, because practical things hurt less than true ones. When we pulled into my parents' driveway the next afternoon, Noah had his backpack on his lap. He had packed it himself: pajamas, socks, his library book, the blue dinosaur. A folded drawing he had made of the two of us standing beside a house with smoke coming out of the chimney. We didn't have a house like that, but he drew one anyway. My parents' house looked exactly the same as it always had: white siding, green shutters. Two planters on the porch my mother changed with the seasons. A brass welcome sign beside the door that had been there since I was 12. I remember looking at that sign while Noah unbuckled his seatbelt. Welcome. It was such a strange word when you had to call first and explain why you needed it. My mother opened the door before we knocked. She was wearing jeans, a cream sweater, and the expression she used when someone from church stopped by unexpectedly. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, and hugged Noah first, then me. Her arms touched my shoulders lightly, but she didn't really hold on. My father stood behind her in the hallway. Richard Martins had always been a man who could make silence feel like a rule. He was tall, broad, and usually calm in a way that made other people nervous. He looked at the trash bags in my hands, then at Noah's backpack, then at me. "Got everything?" he asked. "Most of it," I said. He nodded once, not unkindly, not warmly either. Just like he had accepted a delivery he had not ordered. Noah stepped inside and wiped his shoes twice on the mat. He always did that when he was nervous. Tried to be extra good, extra clean, extra easy. My mother noticed and smiled. "Such manners," she said. Then, almost immediately, "Just remember, sweetheart, this is Grandma and Grandpa's house, okay? We all have to be respectful of the space." Noah nodded. "Yes, Mom." I felt something small tighten in my chest, not because the words were terrible. They weren't. That was how it always started in my family. Nothing was terrible at first. It was reasonable, polite, soft around the edges. My mother led us down the hallway to the small guest room. It had a twin bed, a narrow dresser, and a folding cot already leaning against the wall. There were no pictures, no toys, no color except beige and white, and the faded blue quilt folded at the foot of the bed. "This should work," my mother said, "for now." Noah looked at the bed, then at the cot, then at me. I smiled because he needed me to. "It's good," I said. "We'll make it cozy." My mother touched the dresser with 2 fingers, as if reminding herself it was hers. "You can use the top 2 drawers. The bottom one has extra linens. And let's try not to bring too much in. Clutter builds fast." "We won't," I said. Again, too quickly. That first evening, I unpacked only what we needed. I hung 3 of Noah's shirts in the closet. I put his pajamas in the top drawer. I set his toothbrush in a cup in the bathroom, then moved it slightly to the side when I saw my mother's eyes flick toward it. Noah took out his book and stood by the little shelf near the bed. "Mom," he asked quietly, "can I put my books here? There were only 2. The library book and a paperback about space I had bought used for 50 cents. "Of course," I said. He smiled a little and placed them carefully on the shelf, standing them upright like they belonged. For a second, the room felt softer. Then my mother appeared in the doorway. "Oh, honey," she said, looking at the books. "Maybe keep most things in your backpack for now. That way nothing gets mixed up." Noah's hand stopped on the spine of the space book. I waited for him to ask why. He didn't. He just put both books back in his backpack. That night, after Noah fell asleep on the twin bed and I lay on the cot, with my arm folded under my head, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the house. The refrigerator humming, my father's TV low in the living room, my mother opening and closing kitchen cabinets, resetting the house after we had entered it. I told myself it was fine. I told myself we had a roof. I told myself gratitude could be true and pain could be true at the same time. But sometime after midnight, I thought about Grandma Rose's blue house. I hadn't meant to. It just came up in my mind the way certain places do when you are tired enough to stop guarding yourself. A small house at the edge of town, blue paint that peeled near the porch steps, a magnolia tree in the front yard, a kitchen doorway with pencil marks climbing the frame, one for every year she measured me. Grandma Rose never made me feel like I had to earn the space I took up. When I was little, she would put a hand on my cheek and say, "There's my steady girl," not dramatic, not difficult steady. Before she died, she gave me that envelope. I was 17, and I thought she was being secretive because old people sometimes got strange about papers and memories. She pressed it into my hands and said, "Don't show your parents unless you have to. Keep it hidden until you need a place that doesn't ask you to apologize for existing." I almost laughed then. I didn't understand. Years later, lying on a folding cot in my parents' guest room while my son kept his books in a backpack beside the bed, I still wasn't ready to understand. Not yet, but I remembered exactly where I had hidden it. And that should have scared me more than it did. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I felt the metal bar of the folding cot under my hip, heard my father coughing in the bathroom down the hall, and remembered. Noah was still asleep on the twin bed. He had one hand tucked under his cheek and one foot hanging off the side. His backpack was on the floor beside him, zipped all the way now. That bothered me more than I expected. I had told him he could unpack. He had heard my mother say not to, so he chose the safer thing. I sat up carefully, trying not to make the cot squeak, and reached for my phone. There were 2 notifications from the dental office. One was a reminder about the new schedule. The other was from my manager, asking if I could come in 30 minutes early because someone had called out. I looked at Noah, then I looked at the room. The top 2 drawers were barely full. 3 shirts. 2 pairs of pants, socks rolled into one corner. Everything else stayed in trash bags in the trunk because bringing it inside felt like asking for too much. I texted back yes, that was what I did back then. I said yes before I checked whether I had room in my life to mean it. In the kitchen, my mother was already dressed, hair brushed, coffee poured, a yellow legal pad open on the counter beside her. She had always liked lists, groceries, errands, bills, things to fix, people to call. That morning, she had written my name at the top of a page. Under it were 3 neat lines: groceries, laundry days, bathroom schedule. I stopped at the edge of the kitchen. She looked up and smiled like this was all normal. "I thought this might help," she said. I nodded slowly. "Okay, it's not anything strict," she said, tapping the pen against the paper. "Just so everyone knows what to expect." Everyone meant me. Knew that. Still, I walked over and looked at the list. Laundry on Tuesdays after 6. Bathroom cleared by 7:15 on school mornings. No dishes left in the sink. No food in the bedroom. Help with groceries every other week. All reasonable things. That was the hard part. Nothing looked cruel on paper. My father came in while I was reading. He opened the cabinet, took down his mug, and glanced at the legal pad. "Good," he said. "Structure helps." He didn't look at me when he said it. I wanted to say that Noah already had structure. That he had a bedtime, homework, a lunchbox I packed every morning, and a little calendar from school where I signed his reading minutes even when everything else in my life was falling apart. Instead, I said, "That works." My mother seemed pleased. "Wonderful, and Sheyla." I looked up. "Please don't take this personally." That was one of her favorite sentences. It always came right before something personal. "We just don't want Noah getting confused," she said. "Children need consistency. This is Grandma and Grandpa's house. You 2 are staying here while you get back on your feet." There it was again, staying, not living. I folded the edge of the legal pad back down where it had curled. "He understands," I said. I hoped he didn't. When Noah came into the kitchen, his hair was flat on one side and sticking up on the other. He had dressed himself in yesterday's jeans and a clean shirt from the drawer. He looked at the table before he looked at anyone. "Good morning," he said. My mother brightened. "Good morning, sweetheart. Cereal?" "Yes, please." He reached for the cabinet where we had put the box the night before. My mother moved quickly. "Oh, not that one. That shelf is for Grandpa's things." Noah froze with his hand halfway up. "It's okay," I said gently. "I'll get it." The cereal had been moved to the pantry, not hidden. Just moved. Another small thing, I poured him a bowl and set it at the table. He ate carefully, holding the spoon over the bowl so no milk would drip. My father watched him for a moment, over his coffee. Then he said, "School starts at 8? 8:15, I said. "You'll want to leave early. Traffic backs up near the light." "I know." He nodded like I had passed a small test. That became the rhythm of the first week. Small tests, small corrections. Small reminders that turned the air in the house thinner. I woke early. I packed Noah's lunch. I drove him to school. I went to work and smiled at patients while scheduling cleanings and explaining insurance forms I barely understood. During lunch, I searched apartment listings on my phone and closed them when the deposits made my chest hurt. At night, I came back to my parents' house and tried to make us take up less space. I wiped the bathroom counter after Noah brushed his teeth. I folded our towels and kept them in the guest room instead of the hall closet. I bought our own shampoo and wrote our initials on the bottles with a marker because I didn't want my mother to think we were using too much of hers. I kept receipts from the grocery store in my wallet, not because anyone asked for proof, but because I felt safer having it. Bread, eggs, apples, peanut butter, chicken thighs on sale, a box of granola bars Noah liked. I would hand my mother one of the bags and say, "I picked up a few things." She always said, "You didn't have to." But she took the bag. My father rarely said much, that was his way. He came home from work, placed his keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, washed his hands, and noticed things. Noah's shoes not lined up straight enough, my work bag on a dining chair, one of our jackets hanging on the wrong hook. He didn't always correct it out loud. Sometimes he just looked, and I moved before he had to speak. I hated how trained that felt. Noah learned it too. By the second week, he stopped leaving his shoes by the front door. He carried them to the guest room and tucked them under the cot, even when they were damp from rain. One evening, I found him sitting on the bed with a homework worksheet balanced on his knees. "You can use the desk in the hallway," I told him. He shook his head. "Grandma has papers there. She won't mind if we move them for 20 minutes. He looked at the door. "I'm okay," he said that a lot. "I'm okay, I don't mind, it's fine." Words children use when they are trying to comfort adults. I sat beside him and helped with multiplication. The room smelled faintly like laundry detergent and old wood. Rain tapped against the window, soft and steady. For a little while, it felt peaceful. Then, my mother knocked once and opened the door before I answered. "I'm putting a load in," she said. "Do you have anything?" "Just a few things," I said. She looked at the cot, then at the little pile of folded clothes near my suitcase. "Oh, Sheyla," she said lightly. "You don't have to live out of bags." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I didn't know what answer would be safe. "I know," I said. "You can use the drawers. We are." Her eyes moved to Noah's backpack beside the bed. "Well," she said, "it just makes the room look a little unsettled." Noah erased the same number 3 times. I reached down and slid the backpack under the bed with my foot. "There," I said. My mother smiled. "Better." After she left, Nova whispered, "Is my backpack messy?" "No, baby. Should I put it in the closet?" "No. It's fine where it is." He nodded, but he did not pull it back out. That weekend, I tried to make the room feel more normal. I bought a cheap pack of removable hooks from the dollar store. I hung Noah's hoodie on one and my purse on another. I set his 2 books back on the small shelf. I put the drawing from his backpack on the dresser. It was the drawing of us beside the house, the one with smoke coming out of the chimney. He watched me tape it gently to the corner of the mirror. "Can it stay there?" he asked. Of course. He smiled with his whole face. I had missed that smile. For the rest of the afternoon, he seemed lighter. He read on the bed. He asked if we could make popcorn after dinner. He even left his backpack unzipped. That night, my mother made spaghetti. She was pleasant through most of dinner. She asked Noah about school. She asked me if the dental office was busy. My father commented on the electric bill, but not directly at us. I let myself relax a little. That was usually when something slipped in. After dishes, Noah carried his drawing from the guest room to the kitchen. "I made another one at school," he said. This one had a sun in the corner and 3 stick figures in front of a blue house. Me, him, and someone he said was Grandma Rose, even though she had been gone for years. My mother looked at it. "That's nice, sweetheart." Noah's eyes went to the refrigerator. There were magnets there, a church calendar, a photo of Marissa in a graduation gown, a coupon for fabric softener. "Can I put it up?" he asked. My mother hesitated just long enough. Then she took the drawing from his hands and used a small tomato-shaped magnet to hold it on the fridge. Noah stood back and smiled. For one evening, his picture stayed there. The next morning, it was gone. I found it on the counter beside my purse, folded once, not crumpled. Not damaged, just removed. My mother was rinsing a coffee mug at the sink. "Oh," she said when she saw me looking at it. I took that down before it got splattered. "You know how kitchens are." Noah walked in behind me. He saw the drawing. His face changed, but only a little. He was getting better at that. My mother dried her hands and gave him the folded paper. "Sweetheart, we don't want the house looking cluttered. Remember, you and your mother are only here temporarily." The word landed softly. That was how she liked it. Soft enough that objecting made you look unreasonable. Noah took the drawing with both hands. "Okay," he said. I watched him walk back down the hallway to the guest room. He didn't run. He didn't cry. He just moved carefully, like the floor might complain about his footsteps. A minute later, I followed. He was sitting on the edge of the bed with his backpack open. The drawing was folded smaller now. He slid it between his library book and the blue dinosaur, then zipped the backpack halfway closed. I stood in the doorway and said his name. He looked up at me and smiled like he was doing me a favor. "It's okay, Mom," he said. "I'll keep it safe." And that was the first time I wondered if my son thought safe meant hidden. After that, I stopped trying to put Noah's drawings on the refrigerator. That sounds small. It was small, that was the problem. Everything was small enough that I could talk myself out of being hurt. The cereal was just moved. The books were just better kept in the backpack. The shoes were just neater under the bed. The drawing was just taken down before it got splattered. My mother had a way of making every correction sound like housekeeping. She never raised her voice. She never called Noah a burden. She just kept arranging the house until there was less and less evidence that we lived there. One afternoon, I came home from work and found Noah's bedtime books in a plastic storage bin by the guest room door. There were only 4 of them by then. The space book, a library book about sharks, a worn paperback about a boy with a dog, and the one Grandma Rose used to read to me with the cracked green cover and a page missing near the end. I stood there with my purse still on my shoulder. My mother came down the hall with a folded towel in her arms. "Oh, good, you're home," she said. I was just tidying. I looked at the bin. She followed my eyes. "I didn't throw anything away," she said quickly. "I just thought it might be easier to keep his things contained." Contained. That word stayed with me. I crouched and picked up the green book. The cover was soft from years of hands. My hands, Grandma Rose's hands, now Noah's. "He reads these at night," I said. My mother smiled, but it was thin, and he can still read them. "They're right there," I nodded. Because what was I supposed to say? Please let my son's books exist outside a bin. Please let him be a child, in the room you said he could sleep in. Please stop making my gratitude feel like rent. I put the books back on the shelf that night, after Noah brushed his teeth. He watched me do it. "Grandma moved them," he said. "I know. Was I supposed to ask first?" "No," I said. "Books can go on a shelf." He looked at the door again, like the hallway might disagree. The next morning, the books were still there. For 2 days, I thought maybe that one small thing could stay. Then, on Thursday, I came back from the dental office and found them stacked in the closet behind a spare pillow. Not gone, just hidden. That was the rhythm of that house. Nothing disappeared all at once. It just got relocated until you stopped reaching for it. My father's complaints became more direct around the same time. He started with utilities. At dinner one night, while cutting his chicken into pieces too small for the knife he was using, he said, "Electric bill came in." My mother looked up. "Already?" He nodded. Higher than last month, I kept my eyes on Noah's plate. He was trying to cut his green beans with the side of his fork. "I can help," I said. My father made a sound, not quite a laugh. "You already said you were helping with groceries. I can still give you something toward utilities." He leaned back. "Sheyla, throwing $20 at a problem doesn't make it go away." The room went quiet. Noah stopped chewing. My mother said, "Richard," but softly, like she was smoothing a wrinkle, not objecting. I took a breath. "How much would help?" I asked. He looked at me then, really looked. "What would help is a plan." I nodded once. "I'm working on one. You've been saying that." It had been 3 weeks. 3 weeks since I had signed papers in a courthouse and moved into a guest room with my son. I wanted to say that 3 weeks was not a life sentence, that I was checking apartment listings every day, that I had already applied for 2 weekend front desk shifts at urgent care offices, that my lunch breaks were spent filling out online forms on my phone while eating crackers from my purse. Instead, I said, "I know." My father went back to eating. Noah's fork scraped lightly against his plate. After dinner, I put $35 in an envelope and wrote utilities on the front. I left it near the ceramic bowl where my father kept his keys. The next morning, it was still there. By dinner, it was gone. No one mentioned it. That bothered me too, not because I wanted praise, because accepting it silently made it feel like both nothing and proof at the same time. My mother was different in public. That was something I had known all my life, but living in her house made it sharper. At church, she put her hand on Noah's shoulder and smiled when people asked how we were. "We're managing," she said. "Sheyla and Noah are staying with us for a bit." People would tilt their heads and say, "That's so kind of you." My mother always lowered her eyes a little, like kindness embarrassed her. "Well," she'd say, "family is family." Noah would stand beside her in his clean shirt and polished shoes, holding my hand too tightly. Once, Mrs. Bennett from the church office said, "You're lucky to have your grandparents, young man." Noah looked at me before he answered. "Yes, Mom." My mother squeezed his shoulder. I wondered if anyone noticed how still he stood. After service, in the fellowship hall, my mother told two women near the coffee urn. We took them in right after everything happened. Poor Sheyla just needed a place to breathe. I was standing close enough to hear. She knew that. I smiled anyway. The phrase took them and sat on my skin all afternoon. Like Noah and I had been found outside in the rain. Like my mother had opened the door out of mercy, not obligation, not love, not even ordinary family concern. On the drive back, Noah asked, "Mom, what does took us in mean?" I kept both hands on the wheel. "It means we're staying with them for a while. Like guests." My throat tightened. "Something like that." He looked out the window. The sky was bright that day, too bright. The kind of blue that makes every uncomfortable thing feel more exposed. A week later, Marissa called. I didn't hear the whole conversation at first. I heard my mother's tone change from the kitchen. It went soft and urgent. "Oh, honey." Slow down, then silence. Then, "No, of course you can come here." I was folding Noah's school uniform shirt at the dining table. My hands stopped. My father was in his recliner with the evening news on mute. He looked toward the kitchen. "What happened?" he called. My mother came out with the phone pressed to her chest. "It's Marissa," she said. Things with Tyler got bad again. My father stood up immediately, not slowly. Not with the tired judgment he gave me, immediately. "Is she hurt?" "No, just upset." "She's on her way." He reached for his keys. "I'll help her bring things in." I looked down at Noah's shirt. It had a little stain near the collar that hadn't come out all the way. My mother noticed me watching and said, "Sheyla, don't look like that." I didn't say anything. "She's your sister. I know. She needs us right now." I folded the shirt once, then again. "Okay." My mother's expression softened in the way it did when she thought she was being patient with me. "This isn't about you," I nodded. That sentence usually meant it was about me, but I was not allowed to respond as if it was. Marissa arrived 40 minutes later with 3 suitcases, a laundry basket, 2 makeup bags, and sunglasses still on even though it was nearly dark. She cried before she got fully through the door. My mother wrapped both arms around her. "Oh, baby." My father took the suitcases from her hands. "You should have called sooner," he said. Marissa sniffed. "I didn't want to be a burden." No one corrected her. No one said burdens were something people became if they stayed too long. No one brought out a yellow legal pad. No one said groceries, laundry days, bathroom schedule. Noah stood beside me in the hallway, watching. Marissa finally noticed him. "Hey, little man," she said, wiping under one eye. "You got taller." Noah gave a small smile. "A little." She patted his head like he was younger than he was, then looked past him down the hallway. Where am I sleeping? That was the first time the room changed. Not physically. The guest room stayed the same, twin bed, cot, narrow dresser, Noah's backpack under the bed. My purse on the removable hook, but something shifted around it. My mother glanced at me, just once. Fast, then she said, "We'll figure it out." Marissa slept on the couch that night. My mother gave her the good throw blanket from the linen closet. The one she told me was decorative when Noah got cold during our first week there. My father brought her a glass of water and asked if she needed anything else. I watched from the kitchen while rinsing Noah's lunch container. "Sheyla, don't make this about you." So I didn't. For the first few days, Marissa was sweet to Noah when people were watching. She called him Buddy, asked about school, gave him half a cookie from the bakery bag my mother bought specially because Marissa hadn't eaten properly. But when my mother left the room, Marissa's attention thinned. One evening, Noah came into the guest room, holding the cookie in a napkin. "Aunt Marissa said I should eat it in here," he told me. "Why?" He shrugged. she said. Crumbs make Grandma nervous. I took the napkin from him and placed it on a tissue on the dresser. He sat on the bed. The room felt smaller with someone else sleeping in the living room. By the fourth night, Marissa started sighing loudly when she passed our door. By the fifth, her overnight bag had moved from beside the couch to just outside the guest room. By the sixth, she said over breakfast, I don't mean to be difficult, but sleeping in the living room is killing my back. My mother stirred her coffee. I know, sweetheart. Marissa looked at me, then at Noah, then back at her coffee. It's just hard to heal when you don't even have privacy. Noah lowered his spoon. My mother reached across the table and touched Marissa's wrist. We'll make adjustments. Adjustments. That was another word I learned to fear. My father looked up from his phone. Sheyla, you and Noah have had the room for nearly a month. I kept my voice even. Yes, and Marissa is going through something right now. So is Noah. The words came out before I could soften them. My mother's face changed, not much, just enough. Sheyla, she said, no one is saying he isn't, but everyone was. Marissa leaned back in her chair. I mean, I can keep sleeping on the couch if that's what everyone wants. Her eyes got shiny. My father sighed. She didn't say that. Noah slid one hand into his lap and gripped the hem of his shirt. I saw it. I don't think anyone else did. That night, after I tucked him in, he stayed awake longer than usual. The hallway light was on. It made a thin yellow line under the door. Mom, he whispered. Yeah? If Aunt Marissa needs the room, where do we go? I sat on the edge of the cot. You don't need to worry about that. But where? I brushed his hair back from his forehead. I'm handling it. He nodded like he believed me because he needed to. Then, from the hallway, a floorboard creaked. I looked toward the door. It was open just a few inches. Marissa stood there in pajama pants and one of my mother's cardigans, holding her phone. She smiled a little, not kindly. I mean, she said, keeping her voice light, it's not like you were planning to stay forever, right? Noah turned his face toward the wall, and I felt something inside me go very quiet again. After Marissa's comment in the hallway, I didn't sleep much. I lay on the cot with one arm across my stomach, listening to the living room settle around her. The couch springs creaked every time she turned. Her phone lit up the hallway twice. Once, I heard her laugh quietly at something, and then the laugh disappeared like she remembered she was supposed to be heartbroken. Noah slept facing the wall. His backpack was between the bed and the wall now. Not on the floor where someone could trip over it. Not under the cot where I had slid it before. Right beside him, close enough to touch. The next morning, my mother acted like nothing had happened. That was another skill in our family. We could say painful things at night and serve toast in the morning. Patricia stood at the counter, spreading butter thinly across a piece of bread. Marissa had a rough night, she said. I was pouring coffee into a travel mug for work. I heard her up. She needs rest. I nodded. My mother glanced toward the hallway, then lowered her voice. I was thinking maybe we could bring the cot into your room for Noah. I looked at her. It's already in our room. I mean, use it for him. I kept my hand around the coffee mug. And I sleep where? She gave a small shrug, like that part was just a detail. Well, you're young. The floor for a night or two wouldn't hurt you. The floor. I thought of Noah's backpack beside his bed, the way he had turned his face to the wall. No, I said, not loudly, just no. My mother's face tightened. Sheyla, don't start the day like this. I'm not starting anything. You know what I mean. I did. She meant. I was supposed to recognize the request before it became a demand and give in while everyone could still call me gracious. Marissa came into the kitchen wearing my mother's robe. She had one hand pressed to her lower back. I don't want to cause problems, she said. No one had accused her of that. My mother turned toward her at once. You're not. Marissa looked at me with soft, tired eyes. I just can't keep sleeping out there. Every time someone gets water, I wake up. Noah walked in before I could answer. He stopped when he saw all of us standing there. Morning, he said. His voice was careful. My mother brightened too quickly. Good morning, sweetheart. Marissa smiled at him. Hey, buddy. Noah moved toward the pantry for his cereal, then hesitated like he was waiting to be corrected. I hated that pause. I got the box for him and set it on the table. He sat down quietly. Marissa watched him for a second, then said, You know, when I was your age, I loved sleeping in forts. Blankets, couch cushions, all that. Noah looked at me. I said, he has a bed. Marissa lifted both hands. I was just saying, my mother sighed. Everyone is so sensitive this morning. That word followed me into the day. Sensitive. At work, I answered phones, checked insurance cards, printed consent forms, and smiled until my cheeks hurt. On my lunch break, I sat in my car with a turkey sandwich, wrapped in a paper towel, and searched apartments again. 1-bedroom studio, room for rent, move-in special. Every listing had numbers that made my breath go shallow. Application fee, security deposit. First month, last month, proof of income, no evictions, no pets, no exceptions. I opened the calculator on my phone and did the math 3 different ways. As if the numbers might become kinder if I asked them politely. They didn't. When I got back to my parents' house that evening, my father was waiting at the dining table with his laptop open. That was never good. He had a yellow notepad beside him. My mother's kind of notepad. Straight lines, neat margins. "Sheyla," he said, "sit down for a minute." I set my purse on the chair, then thought better of it and moved it to the floor beside me. Noah was in the guest room doing homework. Marissa was in the living room watching something on her phone without headphones. I sat. My father turned the laptop slightly. There was a spreadsheet open. Household expenses, mortgage, electric, water, internet, groceries. I stared at the rows. He said, "I'm not trying to embarrass you." That meant he was. "I just need to know what your plan is. I'm looking." "You've said that. I've applied to places, for housing or jobs." "Both." He leaned back. "How much do you have saved?" My face got warm. "Not enough yet." "That's not a number." My mother appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Richard, maybe not now." "When?" he asked. "When she's been here 6 months." "I haven't been here 6 months." "No, but this is how it starts. This. Not hardship. Not divorce. Not his daughter and grandson trying to breathe. This." I folded my hands together on the table. "I can give you more toward utilities this week." He shook his head. "This isn't about $35 in an envelope." I looked at him then, so he had seen it. He had taken it. He had known exactly what it was. My mother said softly, "Maybe you should call Aaron." The name landed wrong. My ex-husband's name still felt like a bruise if someone pressed it too quickly. "No, Sheyla, I know things ended badly, but he is Noah's father. He's behind on child support." "Still," she said, "maybe his family could help." I let out a breath through my nose. "You want me to ask my ex-husband's family for a place to stay? I want you to consider all options." Marissa called from the living room. "There are programs for women, aren't there?" The room went quiet. Not because anyone thought the suggestion was cruel. Because everyone waited to see whether I would react. I didn't. I turned my coffee mug slightly by the handle. "I'm not taking Noah to a shelter so Marissa can have the guest room." My mother's eyes sharpened. No one said shelter. She said programs. Marissa appeared in the doorway, wrapped in the good throw blanket. I didn't mean anything by it. I believe that almost. Some people hurt you because they mean to. Some people hurt you because they are used to being the only emergency in the room. My father closed the laptop. "You need a timeline. I'll give you one when I have one. That's not how this works." "No," I said quietly. "I'm starting to understand that." His eyes narrowed. Before he could answer, Noah appeared at the hallway entrance, holding his space book against his chest. "Mom?" I turned immediately. "What is it?" He looked at my father, then my mother, then Marissa. "Can I sleep on the floor if Aunt Marissa needs the bed?" Nobody moved. My mother's mouth parted like she wanted to say something gentle. Marissa looked away. My father rubbed his forehead. I stood up. "No, baby. I don't mind. I know you don't. I can use the blanket from the car." That was when I had to look down. Just for a second. Because my face did something I didn't want them to see. I walked him back to the room and sat beside him on the bed. He put the space book into his backpack instead of on the shelf. "I can be easy," he said. I touched his cheek. "You are not hard." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't fully believe me. That night, after he fell asleep, I pulled my old suitcase from the closet. I did it slowly because the zipper was loud. The house was mostly dark. The hallway light was off. Marissa's phone flickered in the living room. My parents' door was closed. I unzipped the suitcase and moved aside a sweater I hadn't worn in years. Then I found the lining seam at the bottom. My fingers knew where to go. The envelope was still there, yellowed, flat, waiting. I sat on the cot with it in my lap. For a long time, I just looked at my name, Sheyla. Grandma Rose's handwriting always leaned slightly to the right, like it was moving somewhere even when the paper stayed still. I thought about the day she gave it to me. I was 17. Marissa was 16 and graduating early from some special cosmetology program my mother had told everyone about for months. I had a small gold necklace from Grandma Rose, a little oval locket with nothing inside. It wasn't expensive, it wasn't even especially pretty, but it was mine. Marissa wanted to wear it for pictures. My mother said, "Sheyla, don't be selfish." It would mean so much to her. I said no. The room went cold. My father told me I was being difficult over a trinket. My mother said I always made happy moments heavy. I remember standing in Grandma Rose's kitchen later, angry and ashamed at the same time. Grandma Rose didn't tell me to apologize. She took the necklace from my hand, clasped it around my neck, and said, "You know what they've taught you?" I shook my head. She said, "They've taught you to hand things over before anyone has to ask twice." I looked away. She touched my chin and made me look back. "One day," she said, "you're going to need to remember what is yours." That was the same day she gave me the envelope. Sitting on the cot years later, I slid my thumb under the flap. Then I stopped. Because opening it felt bigger than opening paper. It felt like admitting Grandma Rose had seen something I was still trying to excuse. I put it back. Not because I didn't need it, because I was scared of needing it that much. The next afternoon, Marissa brought up the blue house. We were all in the kitchen. My mother was making coffee. My father was reading mail by the counter. I was packing Noah's lunch for the next day. Marissa was scrolling on her phone. "Whatever happened to Grandma Rose's place?" she asked. The butter knife in my hand went still. My father looked up. My mother said, "What place?" Marissa laughed. "The blue house. The one with the huge tree." "Is it still just sitting there?" No one answered right away. Marissa kept going. "Seems like a waste. Somebody should rent it out or sell it." Honestly, I'd live there if it wasn't probably full of dust and old lady furniture. My father's jaw tightened. My mother turned back to the coffee maker too fast. "It's complicated," she said. Marissa shrugged. "Everything in this family is complicated." I put Noah's sandwich into a plastic bag. My hands were steady, but I was listening now, really listening. My father gathered the mail. "That house isn't your concern," Marissa rolled her eyes. "I was just asking." My mother looked at me then, only for a second, then away. That look stayed with me. Later that night, I went to the hallway closet for Noah's clean uniform shirt. I had a small laundry basket against my hip and one sock stuck to the side from static. The kitchen light was still on. My parents were talking low. I stopped before I meant to. My father said, "She doesn't know anything about that house." My mother answered too softly for me to hear. Then he said, "And she doesn't need to." I stood in the hallway with Noah's laundry in my arms, staring at the thin line of light under the kitchen door. For the first time, the envelope in my suitcase did not feel like a memory. It felt like a locked door. And I was starting to wonder who had been keeping it shut. The next morning, I bought a notebook before work. It was nothing special. Black cover. College ruled. 98 cents from the drugstore near the dental office. I stood in the aisle for too long, holding it beside a pack of pens, pretending I was deciding between blue ink and black ink. Really, I was deciding whether writing things down made them real. The woman at the register asked if I wanted a receipt. "Yes," I said. Then I almost laughed at myself, because by then I was keeping receipts for everything. Groceries, gas, school supplies, utility money. A notebook bought, because my father had said I didn't need to know anything about my grandmother's house. I put the receipt in my wallet behind my insurance card. At lunch, I sat in my car and wrote the date at the top of the first page. Then I wrote one sentence. Dad said, "She doesn't know anything about that house." And she doesn't need to. I stared at it for a while. It looked different written down. Smaller, colder, less like something I had imagined. After that, I started writing without thinking too hard. Marissa asked Noah when he was moving his things. Mom said, "Temporary guests again," after Noah left his shoes by the hallway. Dad asked how much money I had saved. Mom suggested Aaron's family. Marissa mentioned women's programs. Noah offered to sleep on the floor. I didn't write paragraphs. I didn't decorate it. I didn't underline anything, just dates, words, who said them. It made me feel steadier, not better, steadier. That evening, when I got home, Marissa's laundry basket was sitting directly beside the guest room door. Not in the living room, not near the couch, beside our door. Her perfume bottle was on top of the folded clothes, along with a phone charger and a hairbrush with pink bristles. I stood in the hallway for a second. Then I stepped around it. Noah was sitting on the bed, sorting his socks. "What are you doing?" I asked. He looked up. "Just putting them together. There were only 6 pairs." He had folded each one into a small ball and lined them inside his backpack. "Your socks can stay in the drawer." "I know." He kept folding. I sat beside him. "Did someone say something?" He shook his head too fast. "No," I waited. He pressed one pair of socks flat with both hands. "Aunt Marissa asked when I was moving my little stuff." My chest tightened. "What did you say?" I said as I didn't know. He looked embarrassed. Like not knowing where he was allowed to exist was a mistake he had made. I took the socks gently from his hands and put them back in the drawer. "One thing at a time," I said. He nodded. But when I came back from brushing my teeth that night, the socks were in his backpack again. I didn't move them. The next few days became quieter in a way that felt more dangerous. My mother started calling relatives from the kitchen while I was close enough to hear pieces. "She's trying," she would say. Then, after a pause, "No, we're not putting her out." Another pause. "It's just hard when someone won't take the next step." Once I heard her say, "I think Noah makes it harder for her to be realistic." I was rinsing a plate at the sink when she said it. The water was hot enough to redden my fingers. She saw me from the corner of her eye and lowered her voice. That night, I wrote it down. "Mom said Noah makes it harder for me to be realistic." I didn't know yet what I would do with those notes. I just knew I needed a record outside my own head. Because in that house, everything could be softened later. "That's not what I meant." "You're being sensitive." "No one said that. You misunderstood." A page did not sigh or smile or tilt its head at me. A page stayed still. On Wednesday, I used my lunch break to call a legal aid number I found online. I sat in my car again, engine off, windows cracked because it was warm and I didn't want to waste gas running the air. A recording told me to press 1 for housing, 2 for family law, 3 for craffainte, 4 for other civil matters. I pressed 1, then 3, then 0 because I panicked. When someone finally answered, I almost hung up. "Legal assistance intake," a tired voice said. I gave my name. I said I was recently divorced. I said I had a child. I said I was staying with family and needed to know what my rights were if we were asked to leave. The woman asked if there was a written lease. "No." "Do you receive mail there?" "Yes." "How long have you been there?" "Almost a month." She typed while I answered. I could hear the keys clicking. Then she said, "We can't advise fully without details, but don't leave without a safe place to go if you can avoid it. And document everything." I looked at the notebook in my passenger seat. "I am." She gave me another number and told me to call if anyone tried to remove me or my son suddenly. I wrote it down on the back page. Then, before I could lose my nerve, I asked about property records. Not because I knew what I was asking, because of the blue house, because of my father's voice in the kitchen. "She doesn't need to." The woman said county property records were public and told me where to search. That night, after Noah fell asleep, I sat on the cot with my phone dimmed low. The house was quiet except for Marissa, watching videos in the living room and laughing under her breath. I typed Grandma Rose's full name into the county records site, Rose Martins. Then I tried Rosemary Martins. Then I tried the street name of the blue house, the one I remembered because Grandma Rose used to make me write it on postcards when I visited. The page loaded slowly. When it finally came up, I saw the address. My throat went dry. Owner information trust, that was the word. Not Richard Martins, not Patricia. Not estate of Rose Martins, a trust. There were document numbers and dates and abbreviations I didn't understand. I clicked one link and got an error. Clicked another and saw a scanned page with half the words blurred by the way it had been uploaded. But one name appeared clearly near the bottom. Daniel Voss, attorney. I stared at that name until the screen went dark. Then I tapped it awake and stared again. I had seen that name before, on the business card in Grandma Rose's envelope. I did not open the envelope, not yet. But I took out the notebook and wrote, "Blue House listed under trust. Daniel Voss connected to records." My hand was shaking by the time I finished the sentence. In the morning, my mother told me Aunt Carol had called. "She asked how you were doing," Patricia said, while packing leftover pasta into a container for Marissa's lunch. "Okay." "I told her you're having a hard time moving forward." I looked up. My mother kept her eyes on the container. "She worries about you, does she? She thinks you may be leaning too much on Noah emotionally." I set Noah's lunchbox on the counter. Who said that? My mother pressed the lid down until it snapped. Sheyla, don't get defensive. There it was again. The room where I was supposed to stand still while someone else rearranged the truth. I picked up Noah's lunchbox. I'm taking him to school. On the way there, Noah was quiet. Too quiet. At the stoplight, he asked, "Am I making it harder?" I turned my head. What? Grandma said maybe I make things harder. The light turned green. Someone honked behind me. I drove, my hands were tight on the wheel. No, I said. You are not making anything harder. He looked out the window. Okay. But it was the kind of okay that meant the words had already gone somewhere deep. By Friday, Marissa's things had spread. A makeup bag on the bathroom counter. Her shoes by the guest room door. A folded sweater on the dresser inside our room, which she said she just sat there for a second. Her phone charger stayed plugged into the hallway outlet nearest our door. She started speaking to Noah like he was a visitor in her way. Careful, little man. Don't step on my bag. Are those all your clothes? Once, while I was making Noah's bed, she leaned against the doorway and said, I feel bad. He's so attached to this room. I smoothed the blanket. He sleeps here, for now, she said. I looked at her. She smiled. Mom's words, not mine. That evening, my father set the deadline. We were all in the kitchen. Rain was hitting the back windows. The whole house smelled like wet leaves and reheated coffee. Richard stood near the counter, arms folded. This room situation needs to be settled by the weekend. My mother looked down into her mug. Marissa went still, but not surprised. I asked, what does settled mean? It means we make a practical arrangement. For whom? His jaw moved. For the household. The household. That word made Noah disappear neatly. I looked toward the hallway. Noah was sitting on the floor by the guest room with his backpack open, folding shirts into it. He wasn't crying. That was the part that hurt. He was concentrating. Like packing well was his way of being helpful. After dinner, I found him putting the blue dinosaur into the front pocket. You don't have to pack, I said. He didn't look up. I know, then why are you? He zipped the pocket halfway, just in case. I sat on the cot. He looked at me then, small and serious. Mom? Yeah? Is Grandma Rose's house still blue? The question went through me so quietly, I almost missed how much it hurt. I think so, I said. Did she like kids? I swallowed. She liked you. I was little. She still liked you. He nodded and looked back at the backpack. I can sleep anywhere, he said. I don't mind. I reached over and covered his hand with mine. I mind. He stared at our hands. For a minute, neither of us moved. Later, when the house went dark, I opened my suitcase again. This time I did not take the envelope out. I just slid my fingers under the lining until I felt the edge of it, paper, thin, real. If they tried to take Noah's bed, I would open it. I didn't say that out loud. I didn't need to. From the hallway, I heard my father's footsteps stop outside the guest room. The door was cracked. Noah's small suitcase sat near the wall because he had pulled it out earlier and never put it back. My father looked down at it, then he said, almost to himself, good. At least someone in this house understands this arrangement has to change. Noah was awake. I saw his face in the dim light, the way it fell without making a sound. My hand stayed inside the suitcase, fingertips pressed against the hidden envelope. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of what was inside. I felt afraid of what would happen if I kept pretending I didn't need it. Saturday came in gray and humid. The kind of day where the windows fogged at the edges and every room smelled faintly damp, like the house had been holding its breath all night. I woke up before Noah. His suitcase was still near the wall. His backpack was beside the bed. The blue dinosaur's head was sticking out of the front pocket, one plastic eye looking up at the ceiling. I sat on the cot for a minute and listened. Marissa was already awake in the living room. I could hear her opening and closing the couch bed, harder than she needed to. Metal legs scraped the floor. Fabric snapped, then she sighed, long, loud, practiced. Noah stirred. Is it morning? He whispered. Yeah. Do I have school? No. It's Saturday. He looked relieved for half a second, then remembered. His eyes moved to the suitcase. I hated that he remembered before he even sat up. My mother made pancakes that morning. That was how I knew something was coming. Patricia made toast during normal days, cereal on rush days. Pancakes when she wanted the house to smell like kindness. By noon, she had called my Aunt Carol and invited her over for dinner. She just wants to see everyone, my mother said, wiping the counter in small circles. It'll be nice. I looked at her. Tonight, yes. Is that a problem? Marissa was sitting at the kitchen table, painting her nails pale pink. I think it's good, she said. Sometimes family helps people get perspective. I put Noah's cup in the sink. Perspective. Another word people used when they wanted witnesses. Aunt Carol arrived just after 5 with a grocery store pie and a concerned face. She hugged my mother first, then Marissa, then Noah. When she hugged me, she held on a little longer. How are you, honey? She asked. I'm okay. She looked at me like she did not believe that, but she smiled anyway. The table was set with the good placemats, not the holiday ones, the everyday good ones. My mother had made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a salad no one ever really wanted, but everyone took because she had made it. Noah sat beside me. His knees did not reach the floor, so he hooked his feet around the legs of the chair and kept his hands in his lap until I nudged his plate closer. Marissa sat across from us, wrapped in that same good throw blanket, even though the house was warm. My father sat at the head of the table. He looked calm. That was what made me careful. At first, dinner was normal. Aunt Carol asked Noah about school. He answered softly. Good. What are you learning? Fractions. Oh, I hated fractions, she said, smiling. Noah smiled back a little. My mother served my father another piece of chicken and said, the house has been full lately. There it was. The shift, small enough that no one had to react yet. Aunt Carol looked between us. I imagine Patricia gave a little laugh. You raise your children, and then somehow you end up with a full nest again. Marissa looked down at her plate. I cut Noah's chicken into smaller pieces. My mother continued, not that I'm complaining. That's what mothers do, we sacrifice. Aunt Carol nodded slowly. Of course, I could feel my father's eyes on me. Marissa set her fork down. I feel terrible, she said. No one had asked her to feel terrible. I know everyone is trying to help me. I just haven't been sleeping. And it's embarrassing, being on the couch where anyone can walk through. My mother reached over and touched her hand. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. Marissa's eyes shone. It's just hard. I don't have any privacy. I can't even make a phone call without feeling like I'm in the way. Noah's shoulders moved inward. I saw it happen. He made himself smaller without thinking. My father took a drink of water. Sheyla, he said. I looked up. We need to settle this tonight. Aunt Carol looked down at her napkin. My mother stayed very still. I folded my hands in my lap. What exactly are you asking? My father's expression hardened a little. Don't do that. Do what? Make this more complicated than it is. I breathed in. The dining room clock ticked behind him. Once, twice, too loud. He said, Marissa's the guest room. Noah's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I said, Noah is sleeping in the guest room. You and Noah are sleeping in the guest room, he corrected. And that was never supposed to be permanent. It hasn't been permanent. It's been long enough. My mother leaned in, voice soft. Sheyla, no one is saying you have to leave tonight. That word tonight did too much work. I looked at her. What are you saying? We're saying there are options, she said. Marissa wiped under one eye. I can keep sleeping on the couch if everyone wants me to suffer. Nobody spoke. I looked at Aunt Carol. She looked uncomfortable, but not surprised. I wondered what my mother had told her before she arrived. My father said, Noah is 8. Children adapt. I felt Noah look at me. I kept my voice steady. He has adapted enough this year. Richard's mouth tightened. So have we. My mother said, your father means everyone has made sacrifices. I nodded. I know. Then why are you fighting this? Because my son was sitting right there. Because his suitcase was packed. Because he had asked if he made things harder. Because the people who called themselves family were discussing his bed like storage space. I did not say all of that. I said Noah needs stability. I'm not moving him from a bed to a floor or a couch because adults are uncomfortable. Marissa gave a short laugh, then covered it with her napkin. Wow, I looked at her. She lowered her eyes. My mother's voice changed, not louder, sharper. Sheyla, that was unnecessary. What was? The implication. There wasn't one. You know exactly what you're doing, my father said. I did not answer. That seemed to irritate him more. He leaned back in his chair. You come into my house, you eat my food, you use my electricity. You let your child spread things everywhere, and then you sit there acting like we're unreasonable for asking you to compromise. The room went still. Noah stared at his plate. Aunt Carol said quietly. He lifted a hand. No. She needs to hear this. I looked at him and felt something inside me settle, not break, Settle. I hear you, I said. Then act like it. My mother said. Maybe Noah could sleep on the cot for now. No, Marissa whispered. I don't want to take anything from him. That was the first time I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because she had been taking the room one object at a time for 2 weeks. Her charger, her laundry basket, her shoes, her folded sweater on our dresser. My father's voice went flat. Marissa will take the guest room. I looked at him. No, the word was quiet. It still seemed to hit the table. My mother's face went pale with anger. Aunt Carol stopped moving. Marissa's mouth parted. Noah looked at me the way he had looked at me in the car after the courthouse. Like the next answer mattered more than air. My father stared at me for several seconds. Then he turned his head, not toward me, toward Noah. And he said, he can sleep in the car. Noah's face did not change right away. That was the worst part. For one tiny second, he looked like he was trying to understand if he had heard correctly. Then his eyes moved to me, not angry, not crying, just asking, is that true? My mother did not immediately say no. Marissa looked down. Aunt Carol inhaled sharply, but she did not speak fast enough to undo it. My father picked up his fork like he had suggested, moving a box to the garage. I pushed my chair back. It made a soft sound against the floor. Noah, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. Go brush your teeth and get ready for bed. His hands trembled when he stood. He nodded once and walked out of the dining room. No one stopped him. I stayed where I was until I heard the bathroom door close. Then I picked up his plate and mine. My mother said, Sheyla, don't be dramatic. I looked at her. Just looked. She looked away first. I rinsed the plate slowly, chicken, potatoes, green beans, water running warm over my hands. The house sounded normal again, and that felt almost obscene. After Noah was in bed, I sat beside him until his breathing slowed. His backpack was on the mattress near his feet now, not beside the bed, on the bed. I touched the zipper lightly. He opened his eyes. Mom, yeah, am I sleeping in the car? I leaned closer. No, he blinked. Promise? I swallowed. Promise. He closed his eyes again, but I stayed there until he was fully asleep. Only then did I move. The house was quiet. Aunt Carol had left. Marissa was pretending to sleep on the couch. My parents' bedroom door was closed. I took my old suitcase from the closet. This time, my hands did not shake when I unzipped the lining. I pulled out the envelope and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where my mother made lists, the same table where my father had shown me his spreadsheet, the same table where Noah had learned to hold his spoon over the bowl so he would not drip milk. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from Grandma Rose, several pages, a copy of a deed. A trust document with my name printed in a line I had to read 3 times. Sheyla Martins, sole beneficiary, another line beneath it. Noah Martins, secondary protected beneficiary. There was also the business card, Daniel Voss. Attorney at law. My grandmother had written on the back, call him when they make you feel cornered. I sat very still. Then I read the letter. Not all of it, enough. My steady girl, if you are reading this because you are simply curious, put it back until you are ready. But if you are reading this because they have asked you to give up something that keeps you safe, then it is time. I covered my mouth with my hand, not to stop a sob, to keep myself silent. She wrote that she had watched for years, not one big cruelty, small ones. The kind people deny because each one looks harmless by itself. She wrote that I had been taught to surrender comfort before anyone had to admit they were taking it. She wrote that the blue house had been placed in a trust before she died. She wrote that my father knew enough to be angry, but not enough to touch it. She wrote that Daniel Voss had been instructed to protect the property from pressure, coercion, or family interference. Then one sentence made the room blur. I did not leave you a house because you were my favorite. I left you a door because I knew one day they might try to convince you there were none. I pressed the paper flat with both hands. Under the legal documents was a copy of the deed, the address of the blue house, the same address I had searched online. There were signatures, dates, a notary stamp. Legal words I did not fully understand, but the shape of them was clear, protection. That was what paper could be when someone had prepared it with love. I called the number on the business card from the back porch. The concrete was cold under my feet. The night smelled like rain and cut grass. I expected voicemail. Instead, a man answered after the 3rd ring. Daniel Voss. My throat tightened. My name is Sheyla Martins. There was a pause, not confused, recognizing, then he said, Sheyla. Are you safe right now? That question almost undid me. I looked through the porch door toward the dark kitchen. My son is asleep. That is not exactly what I asked. I closed my eyes. For tonight, yes. He was quiet for a moment. Did you open your grandmother's envelope? Yes, good. I heard papers move on his end. She left very specific instructions. The house is yours through the trust. It has been maintained. Taxes are current. Utilities can be activated. I have keys in my office. I held the phone tighter. My father knows. He knows there is a trust. He does not control it. The words moved through me slowly. He does not control it. I looked back toward the house, toward the hallway where Noah had asked if he was sleeping in the car. Can you come tomorrow morning? I asked. Daniel did not ask why. He only said, your grandmother already gave me instructions for this exact situation. The next morning, I packed before anyone else woke up. Not everything, just enough Noah's school clothes, his toothbrush, my work folder, the notebook, the envelope, the legal papers folded back into the order Grandma Rose had left them. I put them in a canvas tote bag and set it by the guest room door. Noah watched me from the bed, still in his pajamas, his backpack hugged against his chest. Are we leaving? He whispered. Maybe, I said. He looked scared, so I added, not because we did anything wrong. He nodded, but children hear maybe differently than adults do. To them, maybe is a hallway with no lights on. I helped him get dressed in the clean blue shirt he liked, the one with the tiny pocket near the collar. His hands were slow with the buttons. I didn't rush him. From the kitchen, I heard my mother opening cabinets, then water running, then Marissa coughing from the couch, loud enough to remind everyone she was still there. The house sounded normal. That almost made me feel sick. My father came out of his bedroom at 7:30, already dressed. He had his phone in one hand, and the same controlled expression he wore when he thought a conversation had already been decided. He glanced at Noah's backpack, then at my tote bag. What's this? He asked. Essentials, I said. His eyebrows lifted. For what? In case we need them. My mother turned from the coffee maker. Sheyla, not this again. Marissa sat up on the couch, blanket around her shoulders. Her hair was messy, but her eyes were alert. My father set his phone on the counter. We settled this last night. No, I said. You talked last night. His jaw tightened. Noah moved closer to my side. I felt it through my sleeve. Richard looked at him, then back at me. You need to stop teaching him that every inconvenience is trauma. I did not answer. He took that as permission to keep going. This is my house. I've been patient. Your mother has been patient. Marissa has been more than patient. You don't get to come in here and act like basic gratitude is oppression. Patricia whispered, Richard, lower your voice. But she didn't tell him to stop. He pointed toward the hallway. That room is not yours. It never was. It was offered temporarily. Temporarily means it ends. The word hit the air and stayed there, temporary. I thought of every time my mother had said it softly. I thought of Noah folding his drawings into his backpack. I thought of Grandma Rose's handwriting. A door. Not because you were my favorite, because I knew they might convince you there were none. Richard said, Do you understand me? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. It was not loud, just one clean chime through the house. Noah's fingers closed around mine. Marissa frowned. My mother looked toward the front door, confused. My father stood still for a second, annoyed more than worried. Then he walked down the hallway. I stayed where I was. I heard the lock turn, the door opened, and my father stopped talking. Not because someone interrupted him, because whatever he saw took the next sentence right out of his mouth. My mother stepped around the kitchen island. Richard? He did not answer. I took Noah's hand and walked into the hallway. On the front porch stood Daniel Voss. He was older than I expected. Gray hair, dark coat, a brown leather folder under one arm. Beside him stood a woman with a clipboard and a calm face, and behind them near the walkway, a man in a work jacket held a small ring of keys. Daniel looked past my father and found me. Sheyla, he said gently. Good morning. My father turned his head toward me. For the first time in my life, I saw him unsure inside his own doorway. You called him? He said. Yes. Daniel stepped forward slightly, but did not enter until my father moved aside. Richard, he said. I'd prefer to handle this calmly. My father's face changed at Daniel's use of his name. So he did know him. My mother's voice went thin. What is this about? Daniel opened his folder. This is about Rose Martinez's property trust. The room went quiet enough that I could hear Marissa shifting on the couch. My father said, "This is a family matter." Daniel nodded once. "Rose anticipated you might say that." That was the first time my mother looked frightened. Not openly, just enough. Daniel placed a document on the small entryway table. Rose Martinez placed the Blue Creek property into a protected trust before her death. Sheyla Martinez is the sole beneficiary. Her son, Noah Martinez, is named as secondary protected beneficiary. The property is not part of Richard's estate, Patricia's assets, or any informal family arrangement. My father's mouth moved. That house was supposed to stay in the family. Daniel looked at him. It did. No one spoke. The woman with the clipboard introduced herself as a family services advocate. Quietly. Professionally. No drama. She said she was there because a concern had been raised about housing pressure involving a minor child. My father's face darkened. "She's exaggerating." I looked at Noah. He was staring at the floor. Daniel's voice stayed even. "I am not here to debate family feelings. I'm here to execute Rose's instructions and ensure Sheyla has access to property legally placed in her care." My mother stepped forward. "There has to be a misunderstanding. Rose was old. She got confused." Daniel took another page from the folder. "She was evaluated. She was competent. She signed everything with witnesses." She also left a letter explaining her reasoning. My mother looked at me then, not sad, accusing. "After everything we did for you?" I had imagined that sentence might make me cry. It didn't. I was too tired. "You gave us a roof," I said, and then made sure Noah felt the cost of every inch of it. Her face crumpled, but not into grief. Into injury. Marissa stood from the couch. "So what, you just get a house now? And I'm supposed to keep sleeping out here?" I looked at her. "You can have the room." She blinked. "What?" "You can have it. Noah and I are leaving." That was when Noah looked up. Now, I said. My father stepped toward me. "You are not walking out of here like some victim." Daniel moved one paper slightly across the table. Richard, just his name, that was all. But it stopped him. I picked up Noah's backpack. Then I thought better of it and handed it to him. He held it like it was part of him. We walked into the guest room one last time. I took the tote bag. Noah took the blue dinosaur from the front pocket and held it in his hand. The room looked smaller than it ever had. Twin bed, cot, narrow dresser, nothing left on the shelf. That was how we had lived there. Like people ready to be corrected. At the front door, my mother said, "You don't know what this will do to us." I looked at Noah's backpack. Then at her. I know what staying was doing to him. She had no answer for that. Outside, the morning air was cool and damp. Noah stopped beside my car. For 1 second, he looked at the back seat. The same car my father had said he could sleep in. I opened the trunk and placed his backpack inside, not in the back seat beside him, not on his lap. In the trunk, with the bags. He watched me do it. Then he climbed into the passenger side because I let him sit up front for that drive, even though it was only across town, and he was still small enough that I checked the seat twice. Daniel followed us in his own car. The blue house sat near the edge of town, just like I remembered. The paint was faded. The porch needed sweeping. The magnolia tree had dropped thick brown leaves across the walkway, but the house was there. Real. Waiting, Daniel handed me the key. "It's been maintained," he said, "not updated, but safe." My hand closed it around the key. For a moment I could not move. Noah stood beside me, holding the dinosaur against his chest. "Mom, I'm okay." The lock turned on the first try. That sound did something to me. Not a big sound, just metal giving way. Inside, the air smelled like closed curtains, old wood, and lemon oil. There was a quilt folded over the arm of the couch. A stack of mail on the little entry table from the property manager. Dust in the sunlight. And in the kitchen doorway, the pencil marks were still there. Sheila, age 6. Sheila, age 9. Sheyla, age 12. Grandma Rose's handwriting beside each one. Noah walked over slowly. "Is that you?" "Yeah." He touched one mark with one finger. Then he looked around the kitchen. "Are we allowed to stay?" I crouched in front of him. His face was so serious, so careful. Like he still expected rules to appear from the walls. "Yes," I said. "This time, the house knows our names." He nodded, then he leaned into me. Not dramatically. Just enough to rest. That afternoon, Daniel had the locks changed. I called the electric company and gave them the account information he handed me from a folder. I signed 2 forms, initialed 3 places. Put the envelope in the kitchen drawer instead of hiding it. Noah taped his folded drawing to the refrigerator, the one with the blue house. It stayed there. A week later, I marked his height beneath mine in the kitchen doorway. Noah, age 8. My mother texted, then Marissa. Then my father threatened to contest things Daniel had already told him he could not touch. I answered only what needed answering. Most of the time, I let silence do what explaining never had. We slept on mattresses in the living room until beds were delivered. We ate soup from mugs. Noah kept asking before putting things on shelves. Every time I said yes. One evening, after he fell asleep under Grandma Rose's quilt, I stood in the kitchen with the drawer open. The envelope was there, not hidden. Just resting among takeout menus, a flashlight and a roll of tape. Ordinary things, useful things. I looked at the doorway marks again. Mine, Noah's, a line of proof that we had been here. That we could stay. For most of my life, I thought home was something you earned by being quiet enough, useful enough, grateful enough. Grandma Rose knew better. Sometimes home is not the place that raises you. Sometimes it is the door someone leaves unlocked in your name because they saw what everyone else kept asking you to survive. And that night, with my son asleep in the next room and his drawing on the refrigerator, I finally stopped apologizing for the space we took up.